Go 30 minutes.
Okay, let's try. Let's go.
Are you
Okay,
is the recording?
It started again, yeah. It says recording.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I was able to continue with schooling. You know, I went to the middle school and what we could the high school, but it is a different system and it is counted differently and so forth. But I did all my high school years from 5 years. I did during World War II, and the last year again when there was no transportation, people were cutting the ties from the railroad, you know, the wooden ties loose to cut up for fuel. So nothing could go. There was just, and I look at our situation now, how we depend on electricity, how we depend on internet, on email, on all these marvelous inventions that have come forth that are bringing the world closer together. But one bomb somewhere, and it's gone. It's gone for the whole world, not just for one country, you know. And how do we cope? Can we still live? Can we still survive? Have we got the skills to you know, adapt to such an absolute total destructive situation? It has been done in the past. So, you know, we have it within us, particularly as Latter-day Saints, when we know the plan of salvation and what the Lord intends for us individually to do in this world, wherever we are stationed. And He will there guide us, as He has guided my father, as He's guided the mission president, as He's guided all of us, as we were faithful in keeping the commandments. This very simple message actually from the Book of Mormon: if you love me, keep my commandments, and if you keep my commandments, you will prosper in the land. Maybe not everybody, but you will, because you are faithful. And that is the great message really from this situation. It's not, even now I look back and said, how did we survive, you know? There were, as it says in the story, I wore the same clothes for 5 years, you know. And eventually there was only some meager soup that they give at the soup kitchens. There was nothing. And people then starved to death, absolutely starved to death. And then there was, of course, in Holland great uprisings from time to time against the treatment of the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people had found refuge in Holland since the 17th century, when they were expelled, actually 16th century, when they were expelled from Spain, from Portugal, from Romania and the Balkan states and so forth. And there were several flourishing, particularly in Amsterdam, beautiful synagogues where they met all the time and so forth. And they had been integrated in the Dutch communities. I learned through genealogy, because that was one of my tasks that I learned later on. This was what I was supposed to do. I learned through genealogy. I found some of my Vlam ancestors who had lived in Hoorn and then moved to Friesland, and then after the war immigrated to Australia. There are lots of people that, you know, left Western Europe to Canada, for one, where the royal family had lived, and to Australia and to South Africa, where there had been also a Dutch colony since the 16th, 17th century on the way as they sailed to Indonesia. You know, so this whole world history centers around a great navy country that had tentacles like an octopus all over the world like that, and of which my father had been a very important part, because since 17 he was you know, a member of that establishment. Well, that meant that you taught history a little different. You looked at certain in a different light. When you walked down the street and there is suddenly a big tumult going on and people are shot right there on the spot because of some things that had happened with the German establishment. They had stolen the ration cards, for instance. You know, everything was on ration cards, everything. And Dad had continued to get ration cards, even though he was in the prison war camp. So Mother said, he said, you can use my card, you my rations, you know. And which we of course did, until that was ended, because the Germans had taken everything out of the country. Holland had been the great garden country for vegetables and flowers. And it was just plundered to utmost ruin when the war had ended. I often prayed that I did not have to watch or be there when somebody was shot dead on the spot, or being set to the wall and just there you go, you know, in a retribution for, you know, somebody hiding Jews or stealing food for them, you know. There they were, all these people that went underground. Of course, they did not have ration cards, so but you had to still feed them, you know. And it was, well, indescribable. And only through faith in the Lord that He would bless you. And He did our family. You know, this company paid his salary continually, as if he were working still for them. Of course he was in a certain sense, but not on the premises in Holland. And so, you know, we saw the bombing of part of the southern part of The Hague. We could see it from our home, because behind our home were the meadows. They are now completely filled up with skyscrapers and condos and so forth. You can't see it anymore. The country has been changed too much that I don't want to go back. But I was very homesick when we first came here. And I was in the middle of my college schooling and I wanted to finish it there, knowing that here I probably would not have the opportunity, which I was right about. It was very, very different. But and now, no, it is no longer the place that I remember, where I grew up, where I, you know, had good and bad times, where I went to church, where my gospel was, testimony was built and so forth. Dad had always, Mom and Dad had always thought that we would come to live in Utah, but he could not just walk out of the Navy. He needed to have his pension, and he wanted to fulfill his duty to his country, you know. So we had to wait till he had his full years, and of course, luckily there, if you have spent years in Indonesia, those years count double. So the 10 years that he has spent in Indonesia were 20 years, part of the retirement package, you know. And that's made it possible that in his lifetime he still could come over. When the war was over and a certain amount of irregularity was being organized, the church sent, of course, new mission presidents, and they sent a mission president who was born in Rotterdam. Rotterdam was the city where actually in the very first part of the 20th century that church headquarters was. It has the greatest harbor, and this is where people come by ship and get off and then again and emigrate elsewhere. But that harbor, or that city, was bombed right in the beginning of World War II. And it was in retribution because we were putting up too much resistance. Hitler was not just hopping over to England and said, I'll bomb your cities. And he did. And we finally gave in. you know. We couldn't go to it, was too overpowering. But that city had to be rebuilt and so forth. And then the mission president, he was born in Rotterdam, but he grew up in Utah. You know, in fact, right here around the corner from where we live now, it was very interesting. And Cornelius Sapé began, of course, to rebuild here. And I don't know if you are familiar with the Dutch potato story. The church made a video of that. I mentioned that the Holland was the spot of Europe, and so on. Finally, all war was kind of being cleared away. People were given plots of land to plant potatoes, to plant vegetables, and to build up an economy of food again. And because there was nothing, you know. I can tell you just one quick story from the city of Amsterdam, who was who had, also maybe the last one freed from the German occupation. It had the greatest Jewish population among them. It suffered them as beyond belief, and they were without food a lot. The church had a branch there, and the church branch president and his counselors came together and said, look, we have a lot of aged people, and we have also a lot of very young people that we have to hide from being sent off to work in the factories in Germany. And let's pledge that we will see to it that